Have you ever wondered what it was like to step into the world of ancient Rome, where beauty wasn't just about appearance, but a statement of power, status, and identity? Picture yourself walking through the vibrant, chaotic markets of the Eternal City, surrounded by merchants hawking their exotic wares, from shimmering pots of lead-based foundation to jars filled with something as bizarre as crocodile dung face masks. This was a place where the pursuit of beauty knew no bounds, where Roman citizens, both men and women, invested time, effort, and sometimes even their health into achieving the perfect look. It's a world that feels both incredibly distant and strangely familiar, a testament to humanity's timeless desire to present our best selves to the world. Today, we're embarking on a fascinating journey to uncover the secrets of Roman cosmetics, exploring the innovative, shocking, and utterly ingenious methods that defined elegance 2,000 years ago. You'll discover how these ancient beauty rituals were about more than just vanity. They were deeply intertwined with social status, cultural values, and even political power. From the wealthy patrician women who spent hours perfecting their complexions to the gladiators who used cosmetics to enhance their appeal in the arena, beauty was a language everyone spoke. And as we peel back the layers of history, you might be surprised to find that many of these ancient practices have echoes in our modern routines, reminding us that the human quest for beauty is as old as civilization itself. So get ready to dive deep into a world where crocodile dung could be a luxury skincare treatment, and where lead-based makeup was a status symbol, despite its dangerous consequences. We'll explore how these products were made, who used them, and why they held such significance in Roman society. This isn't just a story about cosmetics, it's about the ingenuity, ambition, and sometimes the recklessness of people who lived centuries ago but shared the same desires we have today. By the end of this journey, you'll see ancient Rome in a whole new light, and you might never look at your own beauty routine the same way again. In ancient Rome, the very act of applying cosmetics was a public declaration of one's place in the world. For the elite, a meticulously prepared face was far more than a personal indulgence. It was a visible, undeniable sign of wealth and leisure. Consider the life of a wealthy patrician woman. Her entire morning might be dedicated to her toilette, a ritual performed with the help of skilled slaves known as ornatrices. This wasn't a private moment of self-care, but a social performance, a demonstration that she possessed not only the expensive, often imported ingredients, but most importantly, the time and the manpower to achieve such an elaborate appearance. Her pale, lead-white complexion shouted to everyone that she did not labor outdoors under the sun, a clear marker of her superior social standing. The use of these cosmetics, therefore, wasn't an attempt to hide one's identity, but to broadcast it with unmistakable clarity. This language of beauty extended powerfully to men in the public sphere. Roman politicians and orators were deeply conscious of their image and understood the persuasive power of a well-presented appearance. While overt makeup was frowned upon, subtle enhancements were absolutely part of the toolkit. A senator might use a discreet amount of rouge to appear vigorous and healthy during a long speech in the forum, combating pallor that could be misinterpreted as weakness or illness. They might even apply a little eyeshadow to make their gaze seem more intense and commanding, believing that a strong visual presence could amplify their words and authority. For these men, cosmetics were not about vanity but about optics, a calculated effort to project an image of vitality, control, and gravitas that was essential for political success. Even beyond the senatorial class, cosmetics played a crucial role in defining social roles. Prostitutes, for instance, were required by law to wear bright blonde wigs made from the hair of conquered Germanic peoples, and heavy, obvious makeup to clearly distinguish themselves from respectable matrons. This enforced code ensured that social boundaries were visibly maintained on the street. On the other end of the spectrum, gladiators, the celebrities of their day, used cosmetics quite literally as war paint. Before entering the arena, they would have oils rubbed into their skin to make their muscles gleam under the sun, and some historical accounts suggest they applied a light covering of something akin to mascara to accentuate their eyes for the crowd. For them, enhancing their appearance was about amplifying their spectacle, their bravery, and their marketable appeal. So every swipe of rouge, every line of kohl, was loaded with meaning. The choice of product, its quality, and even the style of application communicated one's wealth, profession, and aspirations. In a society built on hierarchy and public perception, cosmetics were one of the most immediate and powerful tools for navigating the complex social ladder, proving that in ancient Rome, beauty was never just skin deep, it was a sophisticated and essential social currency. But this obsession with a flawless, pale complexion came at a terrifyingly high price, one that was paid with health and even lives. The most sought-after product to achieve this look was cerasa, a brilliant white foundation made primarily from white lead carbonate. The preparation of this cosmetic was a complex alchemical process. Artisans would take thin rolls of lead and place them over pots filled with vinegar. They would then bury these pots in mounds of animal dung. As the dung decomposed, it generated heat, causing the vinegar to evaporate. The fumes would then corrode the lead, forming a flaky, white crust on the metal's surface. This crust was carefully scraped off, ground into a fine, pearlescent powder, and mixed with water to form a paste. The result was a pigment of unparalleled opacity and smoothness, capable of creating that perfectly uniform, marble-like mask so coveted by the Roman elite. The application of this toxic paste was an art form in itself. A woman would use a small mirror, often made of polished metal, and apply the cerasa with her fingers or a damp cloth, building up layer upon layer to cover any blemish, freckle, or sign of aging. She might then add a touch of red ochre to her cheeks for color and use a different lead-based compound, samothium or lead acetate, as an eyeshadow to brighten her eyes. The final effect was a stark, almost mask-like visage of otherworldly pallor, a look that was undeniably striking but also completely unnatural. It was the ultimate symbol of a life of luxury, a face that had never been touched by the sun or the hardships of manual labor. Yet, the very symbol of their status was actively destroying them from the outside in. With daily use, the lead was absorbed directly through the skin and into the bloodstream. The symptoms of chronic lead poisoning are horrific. It begins with headaches, fatigue, and abdominal pain. Then comes a noticeable decline in cognitive function, brain fog, irritability, and memory loss. As the poisoning advances, it attacks the nervous system, leading to muscle weakness, tremors, and eventually paralysis. Perhaps the most cruelly ironic side effect was the severe hair loss and tooth decay it caused. Women were applying a poison to look beautiful, only to have their hair fall out and their teeth turn black and rot away, forcing them to apply even more of the toxic paste to conceal the damage their beauty regimen was inflicting. In severe cases, the poisoning led to organ failure, infertility, and death. We know all of this not just from the writings of physicians like Galen, who warned of the dangers, but from direct archaeological evidence. Residue analysis of contents found in small pots and glass unguentaria or cosmetic jars, from Roman archaeological sites, consistently reveals high concentrations of lead. These material clues, silent and scientific, confirm the historical texts and paint a vivid picture of the risks Roman women were willing to take. This evidence tells us that the pursuit of an ideal, the drive to conform to a demanding standard of beauty, was so powerful that it overrode even the most severe personal consequences. It shows a society so focused on external appearance and social signaling that it normalized a deeply dangerous practice, creating a cycle where the cure for the damage was simply more of the cost. While a deathly pale complexion was the ultimate status symbol, it was the vibrant touch of red on the cheeks that brought a Roman face to life, transforming a static marble mask into a vision of youthful vitality. This blush, known as fucus, was far from a single, simple product. It was a spectrum of reds derived from an astonishing array of sources, each with its own price point, preparation method, and social connotation. The most common and accessible form came from the earth itself, red ochre. This naturally occurring clay, rich in iron oxide, was mined, carefully washed to remove grit, and then ground into an impossibly fine powder using a mortar and pestle. The quality of this grind was everything. A coarse, gritty paste would be uncomfortable and look unnatural, while a silky, smooth powder blended seamlessly into the lead white foundation, creating a soft, natural-looking flush. For those with greater means and more refined tastes, the plant kingdom offered a more luxurious alternative. Rose petals, particularly from highly fragrant varieties, were painstakingly crushed and pressed to extract their precious color and scent. This created a moist, fragrant paste that could be applied directly. Other recipes called for the use of alkanet root, a plant that yields a deep red dye, or even the expensive and exotic caucus, a pigment derived from the crushed bodies of female scale insects, similar to the cochineal used centuries later. The very origin of the pigment spoke volumes about the wearer's wealth. A blush made from local Italian ochre was perfectly respectable, but one crafted from imported Egyptian ochre or Spanish insects was a clear indicator of disposable income and access to far-flung trade networks. The application of this color was a delicate art. Roman women didn't use brushes as we know them. Instead, they employed small pads of refined wool or soft linen cloth to gently dab and blend the powdered or pasted pigment onto the apples of their cheeks. The goal was not the stark, contoured look of some modern makeup, but a soft, diffused glow that suggested a naturally robust constitution and good health. This rosy hue was culturally coded to represent more than just beauty. It was a direct visual shorthand for youth, vigor, and blood coursing with life. In a time with high mortality rates, appearing healthy and fertile was incredibly important, especially for young women of marriageable age. Even older women used blush in an attempt to recapture the appearance of the youth and vitality that time was stealing from them. Unsurprisingly, the Roman ingenuity for creating affordable alternatives extended to blush as well. For the common woman who couldn't afford prepared ochres or imported insect dyes, there were clever kitchen shelf solutions. The dregs of red wine, reduced and thickened, could provide a temporary stain. A reduction of mulberry juice or the sediment from a particularly potent purple fig offered other inexpensive options. While these homemade versions likely lacked the staying power and vibrancy of their expensive counterparts, they allowed women from nearly every social stratum to participate in the ritual of adornment, to feel that touch of color that made them feel just a little more alive and a little more beautiful in the demanding world of ancient Rome. But if the face was a canvas of social standing, the eyes were the captivating centerpiece, a focal point of drama, mystery, and even mystical belief. Roman eye makeup was designed not merely to enhance, but to mesmerize, to draw the gaze and hold it. This dramatic effect was achieved primarily with two powerful substances, kohl for definition and malachite for color. Kohl, known as stibium to the Romans, was a deep, velvety black powder. The finest quality was made by grinding stibnite, a brittle mineral rich in antimony, which produced an intense metallic sheen. For those on a tighter budget, a perfectly serviceable kohl could be created from the simple soot of burnt almond shells or frankincense resin, carefully collected and ground into a fine, matte black powder. The application of this pigment was a precise ritual, performed with tools that were works of art in their own right. Women used slender, delicate applicators, often exquisitely carved from bone, ivory, or even precious metals like bronze and silver. These rods would be dipped in oil or water and then rolled in the pot of powdered pigment, coating the tip. Leaning close to a polished bronze mirror, a woman would then gently pull at the corner of her eye to create a taut surface and carefully trace the loaded stick along her lash line, creating the bold, dark lines that made the eyes appear larger, deeper, and infinitely more expressive. It was a test of steady hands and patience, a skill often honed over a lifetime. Beyond mere aesthetics, this practice was shrouded in a layer of potent superstition. The Romans, like the Egyptians from whom they borrowed so much of their cosmetic knowledge, firmly believed that the eyes were vulnerable windows to the soul, susceptible to the malevolent glare of the evil eye and other dark forces. They thought that applying these dark, mineral-based liners created a powerful spiritual barrier, deflecting envy and wicked intentions before they could cause harm or illness. In this way, the act of applying makeup each morning was as much a protective ritual as a beautifying one, arming the wearer against the unseen dangers of the world. The influence of Egypt on this aspect of Roman beauty is undeniable and profound. Following the absorption of Egypt into the Roman Empire after the defeat of Cleopatra, a wave of Egyptomania swept through the capital. Everything Egyptian became the height of fashion, and this included their advanced cosmetic practices. Roman women eagerly adopted the exotic, dramatic eye styles made famous by the pharaohs, seeing in them not only a striking look, but also a connection to an ancient and mystical culture renowned for its knowledge of magic and medicine. Using kohl was a way to tap into that perceived power and sophistication. The vibrant green eyeshadow that sometimes accompanied the kohl was made from malachite, a stunning copper carbonate mineral that was ground into a soft, shimmering powder. This rich green pigment was applied to the entire eyelid with a finger or a soft pad, creating a bold pop of color that echoed the green hues found in precious stones and natural elements revered by the Romans. Archaeological finds bring this intimate practice vividly to life. In excavations across the former empire, from wealthy homes in Pompeii to military outposts in Britain, we have discovered small, beautifully crafted cosmetic kits. These pike-sides, small boxes made of wood, ivory, or glass, often contain tiny traces of these very pigments, a smudge of brilliant green malachite, or a dark streak of antimony-based kohl still clinging to the interior, a silent, personal testament to a Roman woman's daily ritual of beauty, protection, and self-presentation. And just as the eyes were framed with drama, the lips were given their own powerful voice through color, a statement that could be as subtle as a whisper or as bold as a shout. The palette available to Roman women was surprisingly diverse. born from both the humble kitchen garden and the farthest reaches of the empire's vast trade networks. For the everyday woman seeking a simple, attractive tint, the answers grew on vines and bushes all around her. She might crush mulberries or the dark, juicy flesh of elderberries between her fingers, dabbing the deeply pigmented juice directly onto her lips for a temporary, wine-stained effect. Other common household recipes called for the use of red beetroot juice or alkanet root, a plant whose roots release a rich red dye when soaked in oil. These were the accessible, democratic options for adding a touch of color and life to the face. But for the elite, mere berry stains were not nearly enough. They sought permanence, intensity, and exclusivity, the ultimate expression of lip color and indeed of status itself, came from an almost unimaginable source, the sea. The most coveted and astronomically expensive pigment in the entire ancient world was Tyrian purple, a dye derived from the mucus secretions of several species of predatory sea snails, primarily the Murex brandaris. The process of creating this dye was as revolting as it was complex. Thousands of snails had to be gathered, their shells cracked, and their glands extracted. These were then left to putrefy in massive vats under the sun, a process that produced an overwhelmingly foul odor, so potent that dye works were always located downwind of cities. Through this fermentation, the clear snail secretion transformed into a unique, color-fast dye that could range from a deep crimson to a rich, dark violet purple. While this purple was famously used for the broad stripes on the robes of senators, its use in cosmetics was the absolute pinnacle of luxury. A woman wearing lip color made with even a trace of Tyrian purple was making an unmistakable declaration. She was announcing that her household had the vast wealth required to purchase something worth more than its weight in gold and the social connections to acquire it. It was a color literally fit for an emperor, and by wearing it on her lips, she was aligning herself with that ultimate level of power. The application of such a precious substance would have been a careful, deliberate act, perhaps using a finely crafted bronze or ivory applicator, each stroke a display of incredible privilege. Between these two extremes sat a more common luxury, red ochre. The same iron oxide pigment used for blush could be mixed with a binding agent like beeswax or olive oil to create a long-lasting lip stain or a rudimentary lip pomade. This created a creamy paste that could be applied from small, beautifully decorated pots. The quality of the ochre, how finely it was ground, and where it was sourced from again signaled status. A rich, vibrant red from a Spanish mine spoke of good taste and disposable income, while a coarser local clay was more utilitarian. The brightness of a woman's lips was never just a fashion choice. It was a carefully read social signal. For a respectable married matron, a subtle, natural-looking tint was often the goal, enhancing her features without drawing undue or inappropriate attention. A bold, obvious red, however, could carry connotations of availability and overt sexuality, a look more associated with courtesans and actresses. This isn't to say noble women never wore bold colors. They certainly did, especially at lavish parties and celebrations. But context was everything. The same vibrant red that might be seen as daring and fashionable at a private dinner could be deemed scandalous on a morning trip to the forum. In the intricate social dance of ancient Rome, even the color on one's lips played a part in communicating exactly who you were, who you desired to be, and precisely how you wished to be seen by the world. Yet for all the attention paid to color and cosmetics, the true foundation of Roman beauty was far more than skin deep. It was a rigorous and often shocking commitment to skincare. a daily battle against time and imperfection waged with some of history's most unusual ingredients. The Roman ideal wasn't just to cover flaws, but to cultivate genuinely smooth, supple, and youthful-looking skin. A goal that led to routines that were both remarkably advanced and utterly bizarre. At the very pinnacle of this luxurious pursuit was the legendary bath in donkey's milk, a treatment immortalized by the glamorous Queen Cleopatra of Egypt and eagerly adopted by Rome's most wealthy and status-obsessed elites. The logic behind it was surprisingly sound. Donkey's milk is rich in lactic acid, a natural alpha-hydroxy acid that we still use today in chemical peels for its ability to gently exfoliate dead skin cells, promote cell turnover, and reveal a brighter, smoother complexion underneath. For a woman like Poppaea Sabina, Emperor Nero's wife, who was famous for her daily milk baths, this wasn't just a beauty treatment, it was a spectacular performance of wealth. Maintaining a herd of donkeys solely for their milk, which was needed in vast quantities to fill even a small tub, was an unimaginable expense. This practice was the ultimate flex, a clear signal that one's resources were so limitless they could be literally poured down the drain in the quest for perfection. But the Roman approach to skincare wasn't all such luxurious indulgence. It also ventured into the territory of the truly shocking, where modern sensibilities recoil. Perhaps the most extreme example was the use of crocodile dung in face masks. Yes, you heard that correctly. Historical texts, including those by the naturalist Pliny the Elder, describe a beauty treatment known as crocodilia, a paste made from the dried and powdered feces of the Nile crocodile mixed with other ingredients, perhaps oil or water, to form a mask. While it sounds like pure absurdity to us, the Romans believed it had powerful astringent properties, capable of tightening the skin, shrinking pores, and reducing the appearance of wrinkles. From a symbolic standpoint, its appeal is easier to understand. This was an exotic ingredient, imported from the distant and mysterious land of Egypt, which automatically granted it an aura of potency and luxury. Using something so strange and extreme was a testament to one's dedication to beauty, a willingness to go to any length and try any substance to preserve a youthful appearance. For those with slightly less iron stomachs, the Roman pharmacopoeia offered a vast array of other, only slightly less unusual, solutions. Ostrich eggs were whipped into facial concoctions for their moisturizing fats. Snail slime, now a popular ingredient in modern Korean skincare, was collected and used for its hydrating properties. Animal fats, like bear grease, were common bases for moisturizing creams, while honey was prized for its natural antibacterial and humectant qualities, helping to heal blemishes and lock in moisture. Crushed pearls and oyster shells were added to polishes and exfoliants to buff the skin to a soft glow. Every single one of these treatments, from the luxurious to the ludicrous, served a dual purpose. On a practical level, they were intended to smooth, soften, and cleanse the skin. But on a symbolic level, they were powerful social signals. A woman with the time and money for such an elaborate regimen was a woman of importance. Her smooth, cared-for complexion was a visible resume of her wealth, her access to global goods, and her disciplined commitment to upholding the demanding standards of her class. In a society that revered youth and vitality, investing in skincare wasn't vanity. It was a social and professional necessity. For the elite Roman citizen, a smooth, hairless body was not a matter of personal preference. It was a fundamental marker of civilization itself, a clear and visible line that separated the refined populace of the empire from the hairy barbarians at its gates. This cultural obsession with depilation extended to both men and women, making hair removal a universal and essential part of the grooming ritual. The most common and precise tool for this task was the humble yet effective valsella, a bronze tweezers. These were not the flimsy, modern slivers of metal we know today. Roman tweezers were sturdy, often beautifully crafted objects, with finely filed, perfectly aligned tips designed to grip even the most stubborn hair. They have been discovered in astonishing numbers at archaeological sites across the empire, found in the remains of bathhouses, in wealthy villas, and even in military barracks, proving that this was a practice embraced by soldiers and senators alike. The process was undoubtedly tedious and painful, a daily or weekly battle fought inch by inch against regrowth, but it was a battle that defined one's place in the civilized world. For larger areas or for those seeking a slightly less meticulous method, the Romans employed a truly formidable invention, the pitch plaster. This was a concoction of sticky, heated resin, often pine pitch, sometimes combined with beeswax and other ingredients, which was spread over the skin like a modern wax. Once it cooled and hardened, it was ripped away with a swift, brutal motion, taking every hair embedded within it with it. We can only imagine the sheer agony of this process, conducted without modern numbing agents or soothing aftercare. It was a testament to the lengths Romans would go to achieve their beauty ideals. For a more gradual approach, many turned to pumice stones. This naturally abrasive volcanic rock was used to sand away body hair, effectively acting as a harsh exfoliant that wore down the hair shaft over time. While perhaps less acutely painful than the pitch plaster, the pumice stone method was a slow abrasion that would have left the skin raw, red, and irritated, a discomfort endured for the sake of a hairless appearance. The driving force behind this widespread, painful practice was a powerful cultural belief system. In the Roman worldview, a profusion of body hair was the hallmark of wildness, a characteristic they associated with animals, laborers, and the unrefined tribes they conquered. A hairy body was seen as uncultured, brutish, and un-Roman. Conversely, smooth, hairless skin was the epitome of humanitas, a complex ideal encompassing refinement, culture, and sophistication. For a Roman man, particularly an aristocrat, removing body hair was a way to visually distinguish himself from the soldiers and gladiators who were celebrated for their rugged, masculine physiques, but were ultimately of a lower social order. His smooth chest was a declaration that he was a man of the Forum and the Senate, not the battlefield or the arena, a man who engaged in intellectual and political pursuits rather than physical labor. For women, the pressure was even more intense. The ideal of feminine beauty was one of flawless, marble-smooth skin from the eyebrows down. A respectable matron was expected to be hairless, her body a symbol of perfected, controlled nature. This standard made the depilatory process a non-negotiable part of her weekly routine, often a social activity conducted at the public baths with the help of her slaves or peers. The tools of this trade became deeply personal objects. Many tweezers have been found as part of intricate cosmetic sets, buried with their owners or lost in household disasters, indicating they were valued possessions. Some were even worn as pendants on necklaces or attached to chatelaines, a constant, ready accessory for tackling any unsightly hair that dared to appear. This relentless pursuit of smoothness reveals a society where the body was not just a private vessel, but a public text, upon which one's status, refinement, and Roman identity were constantly being written and rewritten through rituals of often painful beauty. Moving beyond the visual and tactile, the world of Roman beauty was enveloped in an invisible yet unmistakable layer of scent. A fragrant cloud that announced one's presence long before a word was spoken or a face was seen. In the crowded, sweltering streets of ancient Rome, where the smells of humanity, animals, and industry mingled in an often overwhelming atmosphere, perfume was not a mere luxury but a practical necessity for the elite. It was a personal force field against the city's stench, a way to carry a bubble of cultivated, pleasant air wherever one went. But these fragrances were about so much more than just masking odor. They were a complex and sophisticated language of status, spirituality, and sensory pleasure, crafted from the farthest corners of the known world. The creation of these prized perfumes was an art form in itself, a precursor to modern chemistry that relied on intricate distillation processes. The most common method involved enfleurage, a technique where petals, spices, or resins were soaked in a fatty oil, often pressed from olives or almonds. This oil would slowly absorb the essence of the material over weeks. For a more potent and immediate result, Romans used a still called an ambix. Here, ingredients would be steamed, and the fragrant vapor would be cooled and collected, separating the essential oils from the plant matter. This was a delicate and expensive process, requiring skilled perfumers who guarded their recipes closely. The resulting concentrates were then blended with a base of fixed oil to create the final product, which could range from light, floral waters to thick, unctuous balsams. The true measure of a perfume's prestige, however, lay in its ingredients, and the Roman appetite for the exotic fueled a massive global trade network. A small glass unguentarium might contain the essence of an empire. There was saffron, the vivid red threads from the stamens of a crocus flower, painstakingly harvested in Greece and Anatolia, which produced a rich, spicy, and incredibly expensive scent. Myrrh, a resin wept from thorny trees in the arid landscapes of Arabia and Somalia, offered a deep, smoky, and bittersweet aroma that was deeply associated with sanctity and sacrifice. Roses from the famous gardens of Paestum, lilies from Egypt, and cinnamon bark sailed in from Sri Lanka. Each component told a story of distance, difficulty, and immense cost. To wear a perfume was to wear a map of Roman commerce and conquest on your skin. Consequently, one's signature scent became an immediate and powerful indicator of social standing. The common citizen might make do with a simple scent of local lavender or thyme steeped in wine, but a senator's wife, her fragrance would be a complex symphony of these rare imports. The specific combination was a carefully chosen signal. Heavy, spicy scents like myrrh or frankincense, with their sacred connotations, might be worn for religious ceremonies or serious public engagements. Lighter, floral bouquets of rose or lily were the height of fashion for banquets and social gatherings, designed to be alluring and pleasant in close quarters. There was even a specific perfume for a triumphant general, a special blend said to be carried by Victory herself as she crowned him. To catch a whiff of a rare Arabian resin or costly saffron on someone's clothes as they passed in the forum was to know, without a doubt, that you were in the presence of someone with profound wealth and connections. This connection between scent and the divine was perhaps its most powerful dimension. Specific fragrances were irrevocably tied to particular gods and goddesses, and wearing them was a way to invoke a deity's favor or embody their qualities. Rose was sacred to Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, making it the obvious choice for a romantic encounter or a party. Myrrh, used in funerary rites and temple offerings, carried the solemn weight of Pluto and Proserpina, rulers of the underworld. A woman might anoint her wrists with a scent associated with Juno, queen of the gods, to channel her authority and dignity. In this way, applying perfume was a final, sacred step in the daily ritual of adornment, a way to not only present a beautiful face to the world, but to also armor oneself with the invisible, aromatic blessing of the gods. These exquisitely crafted objects were far more than mere storage. They were intimate companions in the daily ritual of self-creation, each one a testament to the value Romans placed on the art of adornment. The most personal of these was the pyxis, a small, lidded container specifically designed to hold cosmetics, ointments, and jewels. While simple versions were made of wood or pottery for everyday use, the pyxes of the wealthy were breathtaking works of art. Imagine a container carved from a single piece of ivory, its surface etched with intricate scenes from mythology, perhaps Venus at her toilette or Cupids at play. Others were forged from silver or even gold, engraved with the owner's name or initials, transforming a practical item into a powerful statement of personal identity and immense wealth. Holding one of these in your hand, feeling its cool, smooth weight, would have been the first step in the transformative beauty process, a moment of quiet luxury before the mirror. That mirror was most often a speculum, a disc of highly polished bronze, sometimes with a tin coating to improve its reflective qualities. Unlike our modern glass mirrors, which offer a clear, sharp image, a bronze speculum provided a softer, warmer, and slightly hazy reflection. A woman would have to angle it carefully to catch the light from a window or oil lamp, her features emerging from the gleaming metal like a ghost from the past. These mirrors were frequently mounted in ornate handles made of ivory, bone, or wood, carved into the shape of a deity like Venus, further linking the act of looking at oneself with the pursuit of divine beauty. The speculum was the trusted critic, the essential tool that revealed what needed to be enhanced, concealed, or perfected, a silent witness to the hopes and anxieties of its owner. The application itself was a delicate operation performed with specialized tools that required a steady hand. For kohl and eyeshadow, there were slender applicators, often called spathimul or liguli. These were meticulously crafted from bone, ivory, or metals like bronze and silver, their tips finely pointed or subtly spatulated to pick up just the right amount of precious pigment. For powders and creams, women used soft, spongy wool pads or gentle cloths. Archaeologists have even found small, spoon-like silver implements that were likely used to carefully scoop precious unguents and salves from their jars without contaminating the contents with fingers, showing an advanced understanding of hygiene and preservation. What makes these objects so profoundly moving are the personal touches we find etched into them by time. A beautifully carved bone applicator, discovered in a London grave, shows signs of having been lovingly repaired with a thin silver wire after it snapped, indicating it was a cherished possession, too valuable to simply discard. A silver pyxis found in Pompeii was engraved with the name Secunda, a fleeting whisper of the woman who once owned it. Many mirrors have been found with their polished surfaces worn thin in the center from years of constant use, the literal erosion of vanity. These aren't just artifacts. They are biographies in metal, stone, and bone. They tell us that the daily routine of applying makeup was a cherished personal ceremony. The care taken in crafting and maintaining these tools reveals that Roman beauty was a thoughtful, deliberate art. It was a moment of control and self-expression in a demanding world, a private performance with an audience of one, all conducted with the help of these beautiful, intimate objects that connected the mundane to the divine, the individual to the ideal. While the beauty rituals of Roman women were elaborate and well documented, the pursuit of a polished appearance was absolutely not confined to one gender. Roman men, particularly those in the public eye, were equally invested in cosmetics and grooming, though their approach was governed by a vastly different and far more precarious set of social rules. For a Roman man, especially a senator or an emperor, the goal was never to look made up or artificial. Instead, it was a calculated performance of what they termed virtus, a complex ideal of manly excellence that encompassed moral integrity, strength, and vigor. His entire grooming regimen was a subtle yet critical tool to project an image of robust health, unwavering authority, and timeless competence, ensuring he commanded respect in the Senate, the Forum, and before the people. This performance often began with the skin. A senator preparing for a long day of oratory couldn't afford to appear pale, tired, or sickly, as these could be interpreted as signs of weakness, indulgence, or even a weak character. To combat this, they employed the same tool as women, just with a far lighter and more discreet hand. A vanishingly thin layer of cerasa, the same white lead paste, might be applied not to create a mask, but to even out the complexion, cover blemishes, and reduce the appearance of redness or fatigue. The application had to be utterly undetectable. The aim was for people to notice his healthy glow, not his makeup. Similarly, a touch of red ochre could be blended into the cheeks to simulate the natural flush of a man in his prime, full of energy and life-giving blood. It was a public relations campaign waged with cosmetics, designed to visually argue for his fitness to lead. Perhaps no vanity was more keenly felt by the aging Roman elite than the arrival of gray hair, which was seen as a glaring advertisement of declining power. The solution was remarkably simple and effective: walnut oil. Men would take the oil pressed from walnuts and massage it thoroughly into their hair and beard. When exposed to sunlight, this oil would gradually oxidize and darken, staining the gray hairs a darker, more youthful shade. This provided a semi-permanent dye that was far less obvious and messy than the harsh, plant-based dyes used for more dramatic color changes. For an emperor like the famously vain Emperor Otho, who was said to be meticulous about his appearance, such treatments were essential to maintain the illusion of eternal vigor that was so central to the cult of imperial personality. His image on coins and statues, forever strong and youthful, had to be matched by the man the public saw in person. Yet this entire practice was a tightrope walk over a social chasm. The Roman ideal of masculinity was fundamentally rooted in appearing natural and effortless. A man was supposed to look strong and healthy because he was strong and healthy, not because he was artfully painted. This created a powerful stigma against any grooming that was deemed excessive or obvious. The pejorative term delicatus, meaning overly refined, effeminate, or soft, was a dangerous label that could ruin a political career. The poet Ovid perfectly captured this tension in his works, warning men that while it was acceptable to groom and maintain their appearance, they must avoid at all costs the appearance of having cultus, the kind of elaborate cultivation expected of women. His advice was to keep everything subtle: nails clean and trimmed, hair neat and free of dandruff, breath fresh, but never, ever to smell of perfume or show a hint of visible powder. This delicate balance reveals the profound hypocrisy and anxiety at the heart of Roman male identity. It was not only acceptable, but expected for a man to use cosmetics to achieve a specific public image. However, he had to successfully lie about doing it. His enhancements had to be invisible, his efforts completely denied. The success of his grooming was measured by his ability to convince everyone that his authoritative vigor was entirely his own, a natural product of his superior virtue and constitution. In this way, The Roman man's beauty regimen was perhaps even more complex than a woman's. It was a performance where the audience had to be utterly captivated by the illusion, while never being allowed to see backstage or acknowledge the existence of the actor's craft. These extensive written records from figures like Pliny the Elder and Galen are nothing short of a miracle, a direct line to the Roman mind that allows us to reconstruct their beauty rituals with incredible precision. Pliny's monumental Naturalis Historia, a sprawling encyclopedia of all known knowledge, dedicates significant attention to cosmetics, treating them not as frivolities but as a serious branch of natural science and pharmacology. His work is a fascinating and often bewildering catalog of recipes that blur the line between the practical and the magical. For instance, his recommended hair dye for achieving a fashionable black hue was a complex and lengthy process involving leeches soaked in vinegar for 2 months, which were then applied to the hair. The logic, though strange to us, had a kind of internal consistency. Leeches consume blood, the very substance the Romans associated with life and dark color, so perhaps they could impart that darkness to the hair. For a problem as universal as wrinkles, Pliny offers a startling array of solutions that showcase the Roman willingness to try anything. One such recipe calls for a paste made from the pupae of ants and their eggs, mixed with the gum from a tree. Another suggests applying the ash of burned swallows mixed with oil to the face. While these seem outlandish, other formulas reveal a more observational, almost scientific approach. He describes a wrinkle cream made from the fatty tissue of a sheep mixed with honey and the gum of a frankincense tree. The lanolin in the sheep's fat is a known moisturizer, honey is a natural humectant and antibacterial agent, and the frankincense gum would have created a slight tightening effect as it dried, offering a temporary visual reduction of lines. This combination shows a pragmatic understanding of ingredients, even if the overall philosophy was a blend of superstition and early experimentation. The physician Galen, operating from a more rigorous medical standpoint, takes this a step further. He is credited with inventing what is considered the world's first cold cream, a formula so effective its basic principles are still in use today. His famous seratum refrigerans, or cooling cerate, was a simple but revolutionary emulsion of olive oil, beeswax, and rosewater. When vigorously mixed, these ingredients form a stable cream that would melt into the skin, providing hydration and protection from the elements without the greasy residue of plain oil. This wasn't just a cosmetic for the elite. It was a practical salve for soothing wind-chapped skin and sunburn, a testament to the Roman desire for products that were both effective and pleasant to use. Galen's work elevates cosmetics into the realm of legitimate medicine, recognizing that the health of the skin was integral to the health of the whole body. Even dental hygiene finds its place in these ancient texts, revealing that the Roman concern for presentation extended to a bright smile. Their toothpaste, or dentifricium, was typically a powder to be rubbed on the teeth with a cloth or a chewed stick. A common recipe involved grinding up burnt eggshells or oyster shells into a fine abrasive powder, sometimes mixed with crushed bones or oyster shells. This gritty paste would scrub away plaque and stains, functioning much like modern whitening toothpastes. To freshen breath, they would add powdered charcoal, crushed herbs like mint or rosemary, and even a dash of pungent rock salt. While highly abrasive by our standards and certainly lacking fluoride, these recipes show a clear understanding of the mechanics of cleaning teeth and a genuine effort to maintain oral aesthetics. What these texts ultimately provide is a window into the Roman worldview, where the boundaries between science, superstition, and status were endlessly intertwined. A recipe wasn't just a list of ingredients, it was a cultural document. The use of an exotic, expensive material like frankincense in a face cream wasn't solely about its purported tightening effect. It was about the status of using something rare and imported. The inclusion of something as bizarre as ant eggs wasn't just folk medicine. It reflected a belief in the hidden symmetries of nature, that a small, powerful creature could impart strength or vitality to the user. Pliny and Galen didn't just record formulas. They preserved the very logic of Roman beauty, a logic that valued results above all else, whether those results were achieved through the practical chemistry of emulsified oils or the symbolic power of crushed insects. These written sources transform our understanding from mere speculation into grounded historical fact, allowing us to appreciate the Romans not as primitive caricatures, but as ingenious, complex, and deeply relatable people in their endless pursuit of beauty. This relentless pursuit of beauty, from the lead mines to the perfume stalls, was not just a personal indulgence, but a powerful economic engine that fueled trade across the entire known world. The Roman cosmetics industry was a sprawling, sophisticated network that stretched from the misty hills of Britain to the spice markets of India, transforming raw, exotic materials into the very symbols of status that defined elite life in the capital. At the heart of this system were the incredible journeys of these ingredients. That pot of brilliant white sarasa on a patrician lady's dressing table began its life as raw lead ore, likely mined under brutal conditions in places like Roman Britain or Spain. The lead was shipped to specialized workshops in Italy where skilled, and undoubtedly often sickened, artisans performed the dangerous alchemy of turning it into that coveted white paste. The deep black coal that defined a fashionable Roman gaze often started as stibnite ore, painstakingly extracted from mines in far-off regions like Arabia or Ethiopia. It would be packed into sacks, loaded onto camels for a journey to a Red Sea port, then transferred to a ship destined for Alexandria, before finally making its way across the Mediterranean to Ostia and up the Tiber to Rome. The most luxurious perfumes told an even more global story. The saffron that gave a scent its golden hue and spicy aroma came from the Greek islands or Anatolia. The precious myrrh and frankincense resins were harvested from trees in the arid landscapes of Somalia and southern Arabia, transported along ancient incense routes that had been in use for millennia before the Romans arrived. Even the containers themselves were products of empire. The delicate glass uncinteria that held these precious oils were often blown in the famous glassworks of Syria and Egypt, while the ivory for an exquisite cosmetic box came from the elephants of North Africa. Every item in a Roman beauty regimen was a testament to the vast reach and logistical might of the empire itself. Meeting the insatiable demand for these goods in Rome was a thriving retail scene with a distinct hierarchy. At the very top were the cosmeti, the elite perfumers and cosmetic makers. These were not simple shopkeepers. They were respected artisans and chemists who often guarded their complex recipes as closely as state secrets. They operated sophisticated workshops where they would blend imported raw materials into the final products, mixing pigments with binders, distilling essential oils, and creating custom fragrances for their discerning, wealthy clientele. Their establishments would have been found in the finer districts, places where a wealthy matron could send her slave with a specific order and expect a product of guaranteed quality and exclusivity. For the vast majority of Romans, however, Cosmetics were purchased from the vibrant, chaotic world of street vendors and market stalls. The Subura district, a crowded and loud neighborhood, would have been filled with the shouts of hawkers selling everything from common red ochre and almond oil to more questionable homemade concoctions. These vendors sold to the common people, the shopkeepers, the freedmen, the soldiers' wives who wanted to participate in the culture of beauty but lacked the fortunes of the senatorial class. The quality here was unpredictable, often adulterated with cheaper fillers like chalk or clay, but it was accessible. This multi-tiered market system ensured that nearly every level of Roman society, from the highest to the lowest, could engage in the ritual of adornment, each according to their means. The economic impact of this beauty culture was profound. The importation of these exotic goods provided a significant revenue stream for the state through customs duties and taxes. Ports like Ostia had entire warehouses dedicated to storing incoming luxury goods, all of which were taxed at various points along their journey. The Emperor Vespasian, famously pragmatic, even placed a tax on urine collected from public latrines because it was a key ingredient in the fulling process used to clean the wool that made the togas, which were themselves a critical part of the Roman public image. While not a direct tax on cosmetics, it shows how the state monetized every aspect of Roman life, including grooming. Furthermore, the government took a keen interest in regulating certain trades, particularly the perfume industry, to ensure quality control and protect against fraud, which was rampant. They understood that the luxury trade was not just about vanity. It was a major source of income and a vital part of the economy that employed thousands, from sailors and camel drivers to merchants, artisans, and slaves. The desire for a beautiful face, it turns, helped pay for the roads, the armies, and the very infrastructure that held the empire together. Yet for all the weight of imperial fashion, the sprawling Roman Empire was never a monolith of uniform beauty, but a vibrant mosaic where local traditions stubbornly persisted and often creatively merged with Roman styles. The influence of the imperial court, particularly in Rome itself, was an undeniable force, a powerful trend-setting engine driven by the most watched women in the world. Empresses like Poppaea Sabina, the wife of Nero, didn't just participate in beauty culture, they dictated it on a grand scale. Her legendary daily baths in donkey's milk were not a private eccentricity but a widely publicized performance of ultimate luxury, a standard so extreme it became the aspirational benchmark for every elite woman who sought to signal her status and sophistication. When an empress adopted a new hairstyle, perhaps an intricate tower of curls copied from a captured Germanic princess, or an elaborate braided crown inspired by a Greek statue portrait sculptures across the empire, would swiftly update to reflect this new ideal. These marble and bronze likenesses, commissioned by wealthy women in the provinces, served as the ancient equivalent of fashion magazines, spreading the latest vogue from the capital to the farthest reaches of Britain and Syria. This trickle-down effect of imperial preference was a powerful tool of cultural cohesion, a way for elites everywhere to visually demonstrate their connection to the heart of the empire and their participation in a shared, sophisticated Roman identity. However, stepping outside the rarefied circles of the provincial elite, a very different picture of beauty emerges, one painted with locally sourced pigments and deeply rooted traditions. The archaeological record reveals fascinating regional variations that persisted for centuries under Roman rule. In Roman Britain and Gaul, for instance, excavations of graves have uncovered cosmetic toolkits that are distinctly Roman in form, bronze tweezers, and simple pottery jars. But when scientists analyze the residues inside, they often find something surprising. Instead of the lead-based pastes common in Italy, many British pots contain traces of animal fats mixed with locally available earth pigments. Women were using the Roman practice of applying makeup, but they were doing so with materials sourced from their own environment, creating shades and consistencies that reflected local preferences and perhaps a lack of access to expensive Italian imports. This suggests a pragmatic adaptation of Roman habits rather than a complete abandonment of indigenous tastes. Nowhere is this cultural negotiation more vividly illustrated than in Egypt, a province renowned for its own ancient and sophisticated cosmetic traditions that long predated Roman conquest. Egyptian women were the original masters of the kohl-rimmed eye, and they had no intention of giving up their iconic look. Instead, a fascinating fusion occurred. Archaeologists have found graves from the Roman period in Egypt containing the full Roman cosmetic arsenal, the bronze speculum mirrors, the delicate bone applicators placed right alongside traditional Egyptian kohl tubes and pots. A woman might use her Roman-style mirror to carefully apply her eye makeup, but the recipe for that kohl would be one passed down for generations, following a distinctly Egyptian formula. Even the tools themselves show this blend. A typical Egyptian kohl pot might be found, but it could now be made of blown glass in a Roman style rather than the traditional Egyptian alabaster. This wasn't a case of one culture replacing another. It was a creative and personal synthesis, where a woman could express both her status as a Roman citizen and her proud heritage as an Egyptian. These regional distinctions were shaped by a combination of practical necessity and cultural pride. Access to materials was a major factor. A merchant's wife in a bustling port city like Ostia had her pick of ingredients from across the Mediterranean. In contrast, a woman living on a remote military outpost along Hadrian's Wall had to make do with what was locally available or what could be affordably transported by legionary supply trains. This often meant that common, utilitarian products like simple oils and local clays were used throughout the provinces, while the ultra-luxurious imports like Tyrian purple or the finest antimony-based kohl remained the exclusive domain of the urban elite, whether in Rome, Alexandria, or Lyons. Furthermore, some regions simply had deeply ingrained aesthetic values that resisted complete Romanization. Celtic communities in Northern Europe, for example, had a long history of using blue woad for body paint in cultural and religious ceremonies. While they might adopt Roman hair removal practices for social advancement, they likely held onto their own symbolic uses of color, layering new Roman habits atop much older beliefs. The empire's beauty culture was therefore a spectrum, with the rigid, lead white ideal of the Roman aristocracy at one end and 1,000 localized variations at the other, each telling a unique story of conquest, trade, and identity in the ancient world. For the Romans, the pursuit of beauty was never solely a worldly concern. It was a profoundly sacred act, a tangible way to honor the divine and seek its favor in return. This was especially true in the worship of Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, whose very essence was believed to be captured in the pigments and perfumes used every day. A woman's morning ritual of applying makeup was, in a very real sense, a private devotional practice, a way to align herself with the qualities of the goddess before even stepping out her door. But this connection became most explicit and powerful within the walls of her temples, where cosmetics transformed from personal adornments into sacred offerings, bridging the gap between the mortal and the divine. Temples dedicated to Venus were often fragrant with the scent of the gifts left at her altars. Devotees would bring the very tools and potions of their beauty rituals as votive offerings, presenting them to the goddess in hopes of receiving her blessing. Imagine a small, beautifully carved ivory pyxis filled with precious rose-scented unguent, or a delicate silver ligula applicator placed carefully before a statue of the goddess. These were not cast-offs or discarded items. They were prized possessions, given up as a sacrifice to demonstrate devotion and to ask for assistance in matters of the heart, fertility, or simply the preservation of one's own beauty. The value of the offering was a measure of the supplicant's sincerity and their social standing, with wealthier patrons able to present perfume bottles of blown glass or intricately decorated bronze mirrors, each object a silent prayer etched in metal and stone. These practices are confirmed by the fascinating archaeological discoveries made at sacred sites. Excavations of temple complexes, particularly those dedicated to Venus and other goddesses associated with femininity like Juno and Diana, have uncovered caches of cosmetic artifacts deliberately deposited as offerings. Small pots still containing residues of lead-based foundation, coal tubes, and perfume bottles have been found in votive pits and foundation deposits, their presence there unmistakably linking them to ritual activity. These aren't items lost or discarded. They were carefully placed as gifts to the divine, a physical manifestation of a prayer for beauty, allure, or protection. The discovery of these intimate objects in such a public, sacred space powerfully illustrates how the Romans saw no separation between the spiritual and the cosmetic. To care for one's appearance was to participate in a divine order. Beyond the temple walls, this belief in the protective, almost magical power of cosmetics permeated daily life. The application of kohl around the eyes was as much about deflecting the evil eye, a malicious curse believed to be caused by a jealous glare, as it was about enhancing one's appearance. The strong, dark line was thought to create a spiritual barrier, confusing envious spirits and safeguarding the wearer's vitality. Perfumes, too, were believed to carry apotropaic qualities. Wearing certain sacred scents, like myrrh or frankincense, was a way to carry a protective aura throughout the day, a fragrant shield against misfortune and malevolent forces. In this way, the entire process of getting ready each morning was elevated from a mere routine into a series of small protective rituals, arming the individual against the unseen dangers of the world with every stroke of color and every dab of scent. This deep interconnection meant that a Roman woman moving through her day was constantly engaged in a dialogue with the divine. The mirror she held might be engraved with an image of Venus, reminding her that the face she saw reflected was also a creation worthy of the goddess. The scent she wore invoked a deity's presence with every movement. Even the act of purchasing cosmetics at the market could have a religious dimension, as a merchant might swear an oath that his wares were favored by the goddess herself. From the private intimacy of her home to the bustling public space of the temple, beauty was the common thread that wove together the mortal and the immortal, transforming vanity into devotion, and the daily toilette into a continuous living prayer. Yet behind every gleaming pot of white lead and every precious vial of imported perfume lay a hidden world of brutal hardship, a grim reality that fueled the entire Roman beauty industry from the shadows. The luxurious lifestyle of the elite was built on a foundation of slave labor, and the production of cosmetics was no exception. This created a profound and unsettling contradiction. An industry dedicated to the celebration of human beauty and refinement was, in fact, utterly dependent on immense human suffering and exploitation. The brilliant white of the coveted cerasa was born in the suffocating darkness of mines, where condemned slaves and prisoners of war spent their short, miserable lives hacking lead ore from the rock. These mines, such as those in Roman Spain, were death traps. Workers endured constant dust inhalation, leading to silicosis and, of course, the slow, agonizing onset of lead poisoning, all while chained together under the whip of an overseer. Their suffering was literally scraped from the metal to become the symbol of status for the women of the elite above ground. The procurement of other ingredients relied on similarly oppressive systems. The vast agricultural estates that produced the roses for perfume, the olives for base oil, and the plants for dyes were not worked by free farmers, but primarily by enslaved laborers. The harvesting of exotic materials was even more fraught. While the exact methods for obtaining something like crocodile dung are lost to history, the trade routes that brought rare minerals like stibnite for coal from the east or fragrant resins like myrrh from Arabia were maintained through military conquest and economic domination, often disrupting local communities and relying on coerced labor for transport and logistics. Every step of the chain, from extraction to transport to final preparation in urban workshops, was permeated by the institution of slavery. The beautiful, fragrant end product that sat on a lady's dressing table was the final link in a long and brutal sequence of exploitation. This begs a difficult question. Were the Roman consumers aware of these grim origins? The evidence suggests a complex social awareness, or perhaps more accurately, a deliberate societal avoidance. Romans of the elite class were not ignorant of where their goods came from. They simply operated within a framework that accepted slavery as a natural and necessary part of the world order. The philosopher Seneca wrote critically of the conditions in the mines, showing that knowledge of the brutality was available. However, for most, this knowledge was likely an abstract concept, psychologically distant from the finished item they held in their hands. A wealthy matron purchasing a pot of lead paste from a refined cosmetic shop was several steps removed from the dying miner in Hispania. This distance allowed for a cognitive dissonance where the ethical implications of the product's origin were conveniently separated from its function as a tool of beauty and social climbing. Furthermore, Roman society was built on a rigid hierarchy that fundamentally devalued the lives of slaves, viewing them not as people but as instruments, instrumentum vocale or talking tools. This dehumanization was a cultural lubricant that allowed the economy to function without constant moral crisis. The suffering of a slave in a mine was as regrettable but as inevitable as the wear on a plowshare in a field. It was simply the cost of production. The celebration of beauty and refinement at the top of society was therefore intrinsically linked to the degradation and subjugation at its bottom. The cultural achievement of sophisticated cosmetics could not exist without the economic system of slavery that produced them. This wasn't seen as a hypocrisy, but as the natural order of things. The beauty of a Roman noblewoman, therefore, was a monument not just to her own wealth and status, but to the entire oppressive, hierarchical structure of the Roman world, a polished and fragrant mask concealing a foundation of unimaginable human cost. Even as Roman society embraced these often dangerous beauty standards, a chorus of caution arose from an authoritative source, the medical community. Physicians like Galen and Celsus, whose writings form the bedrock of our understanding of ancient medicine, observed the devastating effects of popular cosmetics with a clinical eye and frequently sounded the alarm. Their texts serve as a fascinating record of early occupational health, detailing the specific and gruesome symptoms of chronic lead poisoning with startling accuracy. Galen, in particular, described the telltale signs he witnessed, noting the pallor that was not a sign of beauty but of illness, the persistent tremors, the cognitive decline marked by confusion and memory loss, and the severe abdominal pain that plagued his wealthy female patients. He directly linked these conditions to the daily application of cerasa and other lead-based paints, understanding that the substance was being absorbed through the skin to wreak havoc internally. His descriptions went beyond the physical, noting the cruel irony of hair loss and tooth decay symptoms that would only drive a woman to apply more of the toxic paste to conceal the damage, creating a vicious and ultimately fatal cycle. These physicians didn't just diagnose the problem. They actively worked to provide safer, more natural alternatives rooted in the humoral theory that governed all of ancient medicine. They believed beauty is an external manifestation of internal balance, and that a healthy complexion was best achieved through diet, lifestyle, and gentle topical aids, rather than corrosive poisons. Galen himself famously invented what is considered the first cold cream, a simple but revolutionary emulsion of rosewater, olive oil, and beeswax. This concoction, known as ceratum refrigerans, was designed to soothe, moisturize, and protect the skin from the elements without any of the dangerous side effects of lead. It was so effective that its basic formula is still used in moisturizers today. Celsus, in his Encyclopedia de Medicina, offered a plethora of recipes for homemade cosmetics using completely benign ingredients. He suggested face masks made from bread soaked in milk, or a paste of barley flour and eggs to improve the skin's texture. For a rosy glow, he recommended the juice of crushed red berries or plants like alkanet root steeping in oil. And for cleansing, he advocated for simple washes made from honey, which has natural antibacterial properties, or mild abrasive pastes made from ground lentils. The critical question, of course, is whether anyone actually listened to these medical warnings. The evidence suggests a complex reality of selective adherence and willful ignorance. For the intelligent and cautious elite, the words of an esteemed physician like Galen held significant weight. A patrician woman concerned with her long-term health might have certainly incorporated his cold cream into her regimen or chosen his recommended oat-based exfoliant over a harsh pumice stone. However, the powerful social pressure to conform to the beauty ideal often overrode medical advice. The pale, opaque mask achieved by lead paste was immediate, dramatic, and unmistakably associated with the highest echelons of society. A natural, healthy glow, while praised by doctors, simply did not carry the same potent signal of wealth and leisure. For many, the immediate social reward outweighed the vague, future threat of a slow decline. Furthermore, the warnings themselves may have been dismissed by some as merely the side effects of inferior products or improper use, rather than an indictment of the substance itself. The culture of beauty, propelled by fashion and status, proved to be a formidable force against the voice of reason, revealing a timeless human tendency to prioritize appearance and social acceptance, even when confronted with clear evidence of danger. Frozen in a single, catastrophic moment, the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum offer us an unparalleled window into the daily lives of the Romans, preserving intimate details that would have otherwise been lost to time. The volcanic ash that rained down from Mount Vesuvius did not just entomb these communities. It perfectly sealed them, creating a time capsule where even the most fragile and personal objects, like cosmetics, survived with astonishing clarity. Among the most poignant finds are the carbonized remains of wooden cosmetic boxes, their delicate forms preserved in the hardened ash. These boxes, known as pike sides, were often found still resting on dressing tables or clutched in the hands of their owners, a heartbreaking testament to the final, frantic moments of the eruption. Through careful archaeological techniques, we can see the fine craftsmanship that went into these containers, some inlaid with bone or precious metals, each one a deeply personal treasure that held the tools of transformation and identity. Even more remarkable are the small, everyday jars that have been recovered, many with their contents still intact. In a shop in Pompeii, archaeologists discovered a stack of small, round pots made of a simple, fired clay known as fritillus. These were the ancient equivalent of compacts, used for holding powders and pigments, but the true revelation came from a find in the ruins of a villa in Herculaneum, where a sealed glass ungutarium was discovered. Inside, after nearly 12 years, was a creamy, off-white substance. Chemical analysis revealed it to be a mixture of animal fats, starch, and tin oxide. This was not the deadly lead-based cerasa favored by the ultra-elite, but a far safer, more affordable alternative. This single pot revolutionizes our understanding, proving that Romans were aware of the dangers of lead and that a thriving market existed for less toxic, perhaps even homemade, cosmetic solutions for the everyday woman. The walls of Pompeii itself serve as a vibrant gallery, depicting the very beauty rituals these objects were used for. In the famous House of the Dioscuri, a stunning fresco shows an elegantly dressed woman, often identified as the lady of the house, being adorned by her servants. She holds up a polished bronze mirror, her gaze fixed on her reflection, while a servant carefully adjusts her intricate hairstyle. Another figure stands by, likely holding a cosmetic box or perfume bottle, ready to assist. This is not a scene of myth or legend. It is a snapshot of a real, daily routine. Other paintings show women at their toilette, applying makeup or selecting jewelry from an open casket. These images bring the archaeological finds to life, confirming that the tweezers, jars, and applicators we uncover were not merely stored away, but were used in active, social rituals of preparation and presentation. Together, these discoveries have fundamentally reshaped our academic understanding, moving us from theoretical knowledge based on texts to concrete, material evidence. Before the systematic excavation of these sites, much of what we knew about Roman cosmetics came from the writings of moralizing philosophers like Seneca, who condemned their use, or satirists like Juvenal, who mocked the vanity of Roman women. The silent testimony from Pompeii and Herculaneum gives us a more nuanced, truthful picture. It shows us the practical reality of these rituals, the wide range of products available across social classes, and the deep personal value these objects held. The tragedy of the eruption became, paradoxically, the greatest preserver of Roman domestic life, allowing us to reach across the centuries and touch the very substances, hold the very tools, and see the very images that defined beauty in the ancient world, making the Romans feel less like distant historical figures and more like relatable people, with the same hopes, vanities, and daily routines that define our own lives. Yet for all their symbolic and spiritual significance, Roman cosmetics were also a triumph of practical innovation, showcasing a remarkable talent for engineering solutions to everyday challenges of beauty and hygiene. The Roman mind, so adept at building aqueducts and roads, applied that same pragmatic ingenuity to the world of personal adornment, developing technologies that were astonishingly advanced for their time. Consider the Roman soldier, marching for days under the scorching sun or facing the driving rain of Northern Europe. Standard makeup would have melted away in sweat or been washed off by the elements, but evidence suggests they had a solution. Historical accounts and archaeological finds point to the development of early waterproof formulations, likely using beeswax as a key ingredient. By mixing pigments with melted beeswax and perhaps resins, they could create a durable, smudge-resistant cream that would adhere to the skin through strenuous activity and adverse weather. A gladiator preparing for the arena, for instance, would have his skin anointed with oils to make his muscles gleam for the crowd, but he might also use a wax-based pigment to darken his eyes or define his features, ensuring his dramatic appearance remained intact throughout the brutal spectacle. This wasn't just about vanity. For these men, a powerful and intimidating appearance was part of their professional toolkit, and Roman chemistry helped them maintain it. This drive for longevity extended far beyond the battlefield. In the bustling, sweltering heart of the empire, the problem of body odor was a constant concern, especially in the crowded confines of the public baths or the packed benches of the circus. The Roman answer was the invention of early, effective deodorants. They understood the connection between odor and moisture, and they developed solutions that targeted both. A common method involved using blocks of alum, a naturally occurring salt with strong astringent properties. Rubbing a damp alum stone under the arms would temporarily tighten the pores and reduce perspiration, creating a less hospitable environment for odor-causing bacteria. For a more fragrant approach, they created paste deodorants from a base of powdered charcoal or clay, mixed with aromatic substances like rose petals, crushed iris flowers, or ground citrus rinds. These pastes would absorb moisture while simultaneously releasing a pleasant scent to mask any lingering bodily odors, a two-pronged approach that mirrors the function of many modern products. Just as important was the concern for fresh breath in a society where close conversation was a key part of political and social life. The Romans were pioneers of oral care, developing a wide array of breath fresheners and early tooth-cleaning concoctions. After a meal heavy with garlic or fish sauce, a wealthy Roman might refresh their mouth by chewing on aromatic seeds like parsley or anise. They also created simple mouthwashes by infusing water or wine with mint, rosemary, or myrrh, swishing it around to cleanse the palate. For a more thorough cleaning, they used dentifrice powders made from abrasive substances like crushed bone, oyster shell, or pumice, often scented with these same herbs. While highly abrasive by our standards, these powders effectively scrubbed the teeth and left the mouth feeling cleaner, demonstrating a clear understanding of the principles of oral hygiene and social courtesy. The true genius of these innovations, however, lay in their formulation and their diffusion. The Roman Empire functioned as the ancient world's first vast information network, with roads and sea lanes carrying not just goods, but also ideas and recipes. A waterproof makeup developed for a legionary unit in Germania could, within a few years, become a popular product for athletes in the gymnasiums of Greece. A deodorant paste perfected by a perfumer in Campania could find its way to the markets of Gaul and Britain. This cross-pollination of knowledge meant that a technological advance in one corner of the empire could rapidly become a common convenience in another, raising the standard of living and the sophistication of daily routines across the Mediterranean world. The Roman emphasis on practicality, durability, and efficacy in their cosmetic creations established a foundation of beauty technology that would influence European and Middle Eastern cultures for centuries to come, long after the legions had departed and the last emperor had fallen. But for all its social power and spiritual significance, the Roman obsession with cosmetics was not without its fierce and eloquent detractors. A powerful counter-narrative voiced by some of Rome's most prominent philosophers and satirists, condemned the entire practice as a dangerous form of deception and a glaring symptom of moral decay. These critics viewed the painted face not as a work of art, but as a lie, a fraudulent mask that concealed a corrupt character and threatened the very foundations of Roman virtue. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, for instance, launched scathing attacks on what he saw as the decadence of his age. He argued that the application of makeup was a violation of nature itself, a vain and foolish attempt to improve upon the divine order. For Seneca and his followers, a woman who covered her face in lead and rouge was not just adorning herself. She was expressing ingratitude to the gods for her natural form and engaging in a pathetic charade. He saw the hours spent before the mirror as hours stolen from philosophy, from duty, and from the cultivation of a virtuous mind, which was the only true form of beauty worth pursuing. The satirist Juvenal took this criticism to even more vicious and misogynistic extremes in his infamous sixth satire, a sprawling rant against the vices of Roman women. He paints a grotesque and unforgettable portrait of a wealthy matron at her toilette, a scene designed to provoke disgust and ridicule. He describes the layers of sticky paste and greasy ointments being slathered on her face, comparing the process to a worker applying plaster to a wall. He mocks the hypocrisy of a woman who presents a perfectly crafted public face to her lovers while being a monstrous, oozing mess in the privacy of her chambers. For Juvenal, this artifice was proof of female duplicity and sexual immorality. A painted woman, in his view, was inherently untrustworthy, her real self and her real intentions hidden beneath a calculated facade designed solely to ensnare men. His writings are less a philosophical critique and more a bitter social commentary, reflecting deep-seated anxieties about women's increasing social and financial independence during the imperial period. Beneath the surface of these specific complaints lay a much broader cultural anxiety about shifting gender roles and the perceived softness of modern life. The Roman moral ideal, particularly for men, was one of rugged simplicity and uncompromising honesty values associated with the mythologized early republic. The elaborate, expensive, and often Eastern-influenced beauty rituals of the imperial era stood in stark opposition to this old-fashioned ideal. Critics saw the embrace of cosmetics as part of a larger pattern of decadence that included lavish banquets, effeminate clothing, and other foreign luxuries that were supposedly eroding the tough, masculine character that had built the empire. When a man like Emperor Otho was known for his meticulous plucking of body hair and use of perfume, it wasn't just a personal choice. It was a political liability that his opponents could use to question his fitness to lead. The fear was that a society that prioritized superficial beauty over inner strength was a society in terminal decline. This created a fascinating and inescapable double bind, particularly for Roman women. They were caught between immense social pressure to be beautiful and the constant moral condemnation for the very practices required to achieve that beauty. A respectable matron was expected to be an ornament to her husband's household, a visible symbol of his wealth and status. Yet if she pursued this ideal too zealously with the tools available to her, she risked being labeled a decadent, deceptive, and immoral femina by the likes of Juvenal. This tension reveals that Roman beauty culture was never just about aesthetics. It was a battleground where deeper conflicts over identity, morality, and the soul of the empire were fiercely fought. The painted face became a potent symbol upon which philosophers projected their fears about truth and falsehood, and satirists pinned their anxieties about a changing world where old certainties seemed to be melting away as quickly as a layer of scented wax in the sun. Yet this profound Roman influence on beauty did not vanish with the fall of the empire. Instead, it receded into the background, patiently waiting for its rediscovery. For centuries, the sophisticated formulas and rituals were preserved not in European practice, but within the libraries and apothecaries of the Islamic world, where scholars safeguarded and expanded upon Greco-Roman medical and cosmetic knowledge. It was only during the Renaissance, that great era of rediscovery, that Europe once again turned its gaze back to the classical world, and with it, embraced the Roman philosophy of beauty. Renaissance thinkers, seeing themselves as the direct heirs to Rome's intellectual and cultural legacy, voraciously studied translated classical texts. They found in the writings of Galen, Pliny, and Ovid not mere historical curiosities, but a veritable recipe book for elegance. This sparked a direct revival of ancient practices. Women of the Italian courts, seeking to emulate the pale, statuesque ideal of Roman matrons, began applying their own versions of lead-based cerasa and vermilion rouge, consciously modeling their appearance on the ancient frescoes and sculptures being unearthed around them. The pursuit of a classical beauty became synonymous with being cultured and educated, a visible signal of one's participation in the rebirth of ancient wisdom. This classical revival found its most enduring expression not on the face, but in the hair. The intricate braided styles worn by Roman empresses like Faustina the Younger or Julia Domna, meticulously recorded in marble, became the direct inspiration for the elaborate coiffures of the Victorian and Edwardian eras. Women pored over books of classical art, asking their hairdressers to recreate the intricate curls, waves, and plaits seen on ancient busts, believing these styles conveyed a sense of dignity, grace, and timeless beauty. Furthermore, the Victorian fascination with all things natural and homemade, coupled with a growing distrust of the industrial chemicals emerging in some cosmetics, led to a specific revival of actual Roman recipes. Popular household manuals of the 18th and 19th centuries, like those written by Mrs. Beeton, frequently contained recipes for pomatum, a scented hair pomade made from animal fat and fragrant herbs, or lily water for whitening the skin, both of which were direct descendants, if not exact copies, of formulas described by Pliny the Elder. The Victorian bathroom cabinet, with its jars of cold cream and pots of handmade lip salves, owed a far greater debt to a Roman ornatrix's toolkit than anyone at the time likely realized. Perhaps the most significant and lasting Roman contribution, however, is not a specific product but an entire philosophy, the foundational concept of a daily skincare regimen. The Roman ideal of cultus, the dedicated, ritualistic care of one's appearance, established the blueprint for the modern multi-step routine. The Roman woman's sequence of cleansing with oils, applying treatments and unguents, and finishing with color cosmetics is the direct precursor to our contemporary understanding of cleanse, tone, treat, and moisturize. Even the specific ingredients they prized for their efficacy have endured for 2 millennia. Walk down any modern skincare aisle, and you will see the legacy of Roman innovations staring back at you. Almond oil and olive oil remain celebrated emollients and cleansing base oils. Rosewater is a ubiquitous toner, cherished for its soothing and astringent properties. Honey is a key component in hydrating and antibacterial masks, and the lactic acid in donkey's milk, which the Romans observed could soften and brighten the skin, is now a scientifically proven alpha hydroxy acid, synthesized and bottled in elegant serums. The packaging has changed from alabaster jars to glass bottles, but the core ingredients and their intended effects are remarkably consistent. This enduring influence reveals a profound truth about our relationship with beauty. While technologies advance and specific styles fluctuate, the fundamental human desires that drove the Romans are still with us today. The wish to present our best face to the world, to signal our status and identity, to protect ourselves from the environment, and to connect with something timeless, these impulses are as ancient as civilization itself. The modern beauty industry, with its global reach and scientific prowess, is not a complete break from the past, but the latest evolution of a very old tradition. We have replaced crocodile dung with hyaluronic acid and lead paste with titanium dioxide, but the underlying pursuit remains. Every time we smooth on a moisturizer or apply a touch of color, we are, in a small way, participating in a ritual that would be intimately familiar to a woman gazing into her bronze mirror in Pompeii, proving that the quest for beauty is one of the most enduring and connecting threads in the entire human story. In a fascinating fusion of science and history, experimental archaeologists have stepped into the laboratory to become modern-day Roman perfumers and cosmeticians, attempting to resurrect ancient recipes exactly as they were written. This isn't just about mixing ingredients. It's a meticulous process of reverse engineering the sensory world of Roman beauty, from the texture of a lead paste to the exact scent of a 2,000-year-old perfume. The goal is to move beyond the texts and the artifacts to truly understand the experience, what it actually felt, smelled, and looked like to wear these products. The results of these experiments are often shocking, sometimes bizarre, and always illuminating, offering a tangible and occasionally alarming connection to the daily lives of the ancients. One of the most revealing and frankly terrifying recreations has been the production of cerasa, the iconic white lead foundation. Following Pliny the Elder's detailed instructions, researchers placed rolls of pure lead over pots of vinegar and buried them in mounds of manure. As the manure decomposed, it generated heat, causing the vinegar to evaporate. The acidic fumes then corroded the lead, forming a flaky, white crust of lead carbonate. When this crust was scraped off, ground into a powder, and mixed with water, it created a paste with a uniquely unsettling quality. Modern testers who applied it reported an immediate, almost chalky dryness, followed by a distinct metallic taste in their mouths, a direct and unnerving sign of the lead beginning to enter their system. The coverage, however, was undeniably perfect. The paste was incredibly opaque, creating a smooth, stark white mask that completely eradicated any blemish or uneven skin tone, instantly clarifying why this dangerous product remained so desirable for centuries despite its horrific cost. The olfactory journey has been equally profound, with researchers venturing into the world of ancient perfumery. Using clay pots and reconstruction stills based on archaeological finds, they have meticulously steam distilled essential oils from myrrh, frankincense, and saffron, following the methods of a Roman cosmeta. The resulting fragrances are nothing like the light, volatile alcoholic perfumes of today. These ancient recreations are deep, resinous, and incredibly potent oil-based unguents. A single drop releases a complex, long-lasting scent that is less about fleeting floral notes and more about a profound, smoky, and almost sacred aroma. When testers wear these recreated scents, they report that the fragrance evolves over hours, warming with the skin and creating a rich, personal aura that feels more like an aromatic garment than a simple spritz. This sensory experience helps explain why perfume was considered a vital part of one's public identity and spiritual armor. However, this work is conducted under the shadow of modern knowledge, with strict safety protocols that the Romans never conceived of. Every handling of recreated lead-based makeup is done with nitrile gloves, masks, and fume hoods to prevent any skin contact or inhalation. The cosmetic applicators used for testing are single-use, and any skin that comes into accidental contact is immediately and thoroughly washed. The researchers themselves undergo regular blood testing for heavy metal exposure. This extreme caution highlights the vast gulf between ancient and modern perspectives. The Romans valued the immediate, dramatic visual result, either unaware of or choosing to ignore the gradual, systemic poison they were applying. We, with our understanding of biochemistry and toxicology, can only marvel at their risk tolerance, seeing in the beautiful white paste not a symbol of status, but a chronicle of suffering. Beyond the obvious dangers, these experiments have also solved smaller mysteries and corrected long-held assumptions. For instance, some recipes calling for crocodile dung were long dismissed as satirical exaggerations or symbolic metaphors. Yet when researchers actually acquired and prepared the substance according to the ancient instructions, they discovered a practical, if revolting, purpose. The dried and powdered dung, when mixed into a paste, acted as a powerful desiccant, tightening the skin as it dried and providing a temporary, pore-minimizing effect. While we would never recommend it today, the experiment proved it wasn't merely a bizarre myth. It was a functional, if extreme, astringent treatment. Other recreations of homemade blushes from mulberry juice or fig sediment have shown how resourceful common Romans were, creating effective, if less durable, cosmetics from their kitchen gardens. Each successful recreation peels back another layer of time, allowing us to not just read about Roman beauty, but to finally see it, smell it, and in doing so, understand the incredible lengths they went to in their timeless pursuit of perfection. While Roman society maintained a clear public ideal of masculine simplicity, the reality of male grooming reveals a far more nuanced and often contradictory relationship with cosmetics, one deeply entangled with performance, power, and the perpetual fear of appearing un-Roman. For Roman men, the acceptable use of beauty products was a carefully negotiated space, a tightrope walk between maintaining a facade of natural vigor and employing the very artificial enhancements that could create it. The ultimate goal was the projection of virtus, an ideal of manly excellence encompassing strength, morality, and authority. A senator's pale, tired complexion could be interpreted as weakness or indulgence, a political liability in the ruthless arena of public life. To combat this, they turned to the same arsenal as women, but with a mandate for absolute subtlety. A whisper-thin layer of cerasa might be applied not to create a mask, but to even out the skin tone and conceal signs of fatigue, while a discreet touch of red ochre on the cheeks could simulate the healthy flush of a man in his prime. The success of this practice hinged on its invisibility. The art was in making it look entirely natural, a visual argument for one's inherent fitness to lead. This performance extended powerfully into the realm of hair, where the arrival of gray strands was viewed as a glaring advertisement of declining power. The most common and socially acceptable solution was a clever use of walnut oil. Men would massage the oil into their hair and beard, and when exposed to sunlight, it would gradually oxidize and darken, staining the gray hairs a more youthful shade. This semi-permanent treatment was far less obvious than harsh plant dyes, and allowed figures like the famously vain Emperor Otho to maintain the illusion of eternal vigor essential to the cult of imperial personality. His image on coins and statues, forever strong and youthful, had to be matched by the man the public saw. Yet, this entire practice existed under the cloud of a powerful social stigma. The Roman masculine ideal was fundamentally rooted in the appearance of effortless superiority. A man was supposed to look robust because he was robust, not because he was artfully enhanced. This created a profound hypocrisy where it was acceptable, even expected, for a man to use cosmetics to achieve a specific image, but he had to successfully lie about doing it. The pejorative label delicatus, meaning overly refined, effeminate, or soft, was a dangerous accusation that could ruin a political career, making the denial of one's grooming regimen as important as the regimen itself. However, this rigid code of masculine appearance was deliberately and spectacularly upended in two specific, accepted contexts: the theater and the temple. On the stage, cross-dressing was a central feature of Roman comedy, as all roles were played by male actors. A young man playing a female character would don a flowing gown, a wig of long, styled hair, and apply the full, unmistakable makeup of a Roman matron. The white lead foundation, the bright rouge, the dark kohl-rimmed eyes. This transformation was not seen as subversive, but as a skillful artistic illusion, a performance that audiences could enjoy precisely because it so blatantly contrasted with the actor's off-stage identity. In a similar vein, religious ceremonies often required ritual cross-dressing that inverted everyday norms. During the annual festival of the goddess Cybele, her male priests, known as the Galli, would publicly castrate themselves and thereafter live as women, adopting female clothing, hairstyles, and cosmetics as a permanent sign of their divine devotion. While these figures existed on the social margins and were sometimes viewed with a mixture of awe and suspicion, their altered appearance was sanctioned by religious tradition, creating a sacred space where the standard rules of gender expression were suspended in service to a higher power. Beyond these sanctioned exceptions, there is compelling evidence for more personal and subversive uses of cosmetics that challenged conventional boundaries. The poetry of Martial and Juvenal is filled with snide remarks about men they considered too effeminate, mocking their plucked body hair, their use of perfume, and their overly smooth, powdered faces. While these accounts are steeped in ridicule, they point to the existence of a subculture, particularly in the cosmopolitan capital, where some men adopted beauty practices associated with women to express a different identity. Furthermore, the discovery of high-quality cosmetic tools in the graves of some military officers stationed on the frontiers hints at a private world of male grooming that may have diverged from the stoic public image the legions presented. A commander far from the judgmental eyes of Rome might have felt freer to use a little kohl to accentuate his eyes or a scented oil to remind him of home, suggesting that the performance of gender was often context-dependent, fluctuating between the public demands of conformity and the private desires of the individual. As the legions marched and trade routes sprawled, the Roman ideal of beauty traveled with them, not as a set of enforced rules, but as a compelling new language of status and sophistication that distant cultures could choose to speak, adapt, or outright reject. This wasn't a simple case of imperial imposition. It was a complex, two-way exchange where local traditions met Roman trends, creating fascinating hybrid practices that reveal the subtle power of cultural influence. In the remote northern province of Britannia, for instance, archaeological digs have uncovered a telling pattern. In graves of wealthy local women from tribes like the Trinovantes or the Catuvellani, we find the full toolkit of a Roman lady: fine bronze tweezers for depilation, delicate bone applicators for kohl, and small pottery jars for creams. But when scientists analyze the residues inside those jars, they often find not the lead-based pastes of Rome, but mixtures based on local animal fats and earth pigments. These women had adopted the Roman ritual of adornment, using the imported tools as symbols of their new status within the imperial system. But they were still coloring their faces with the hues of their own land, blending old and new into a unique provincial identity. Venturing into the lands beyond the Rhine, in Germania, the story shifts from adoption to a more selective and symbolic appropriation. Here, Roman goods were rare and highly prized, often arriving as diplomatic gifts or loot from clashes with the legions. A stunning discovery in a chieftain's grave in modern-day Denmark contained a beautiful Roman silver mirror, alongside a set of intricate local brooches. This wasn't a tool for daily use as it was in Pompeii. It was a treasure, a powerful object that spoke of connections to a vast and wealthy world far away. The Germanic elite likely valued it for its craftsmanship and exotic origin, perhaps even attributing mystical properties to its reflective surface, rather than embracing the full Roman cosmetic ideal. Their own beauty standards, which prized long, elaborately knotted hair and bold, symbolic body art, remained dominant. The Roman object was absorbed into an existing value system, becoming a potent symbol of power and prestige without necessarily changing the local definition of beauty itself. The interaction with the East, particularly with the powerful Parthian and later Sasanian Persian empires, reveals a relationship of mutual influence between equals. Here, Rome was not the sole exporter of culture. It was also an eager importer. The sophisticated kohl recipes and dramatic eye makeup styles that became so popular in Rome were themselves refined adaptations of centuries-old Persian and Mesopotamian practices. Roman merchants craved the intense, metallic stibnite kohl from the East, considering it far superior to local substitutes. Conversely, in the bustling metropolises of the Persian Empire, Roman glassware became a coveted luxury. Exquisitely crafted glass unguentaria and scent bottles from Roman workshops have been found in sites like Ctesiphon, often holding precious local perfumes. A wealthy Persian woman might use a Roman bottle to store her traditional rose attar, a perfect metaphor for the exchange. The container was Roman, but the content and the cultural meaning behind it remained steadfastly Persian. This was not a one-way street of cultural conquest, but a dialogue between two ancient civilizations, each appreciating and incorporating the finest goods the other had to offer. The sheer distance some of these objects traveled is a testament to their perceived value. A Roman bronze cosmetic grinder used to pulverize minerals into fine powder for makeup was discovered in a grave in what is now southern Russia, thousands of miles from any Roman settlement. It must have been passed from hand to hand through countless middlemen, each transaction increasing its value and mystique. This single artifact tells a story not of legions and conquest, but of slow, patient trade and the powerful allure of distant ideas. These objects became more than just tools. They were tokens of a wider world, physical connections to the immense and sophisticated empire that dominated the Mediterranean. Whether a British noblewoman used her Roman tweezers to fit in with the new ruling class, a Germanic chieftain prized his mirror as a trophy of defiance, or a Persian merchant valued a glass bottle for its superior craftsmanship, each artifact represents a choice. The globalization of Roman beauty wasn't about creating a monolithic culture. It was about offering a new set of options, a fresh vocabulary of status that diverse peoples could use to write their own evolving stories of identity under the vast shadow of the eagle. From the stark, white lead foundations that promised status at the cost of health to the sacred perfumes that served as fragrant prayers to the gods, the world of Roman cosmetics reveals a society profoundly invested in the power of appearance. Every swipe of rouge, every line of kohl was loaded with meaning, a sophisticated language used to navigate the intricate hierarchies of class, gender, and profession. These rituals were far more than mere vanity. They were essential tools for survival and success in a world where how you were seen determined who you could be. The Roman pursuit of beauty was a complex dance of innovation and risk, spirituality and science, creating a legacy that continues to resonate in our own routines and products today. As we close this journey into the heart of ancient Rome, it's worth reflecting on the invisible threads that connect our modern lives to those of the people who walked the Forum 2,000 years ago. The next time you smooth on a moisturizer, remember Galen's cold cream, a simple emulsion of rosewater, olive oil, and beeswax that established the very principles of skincare we still follow. When you apply a bold lip color, consider the Roman matron who might have used a pigment worth more than gold, derived from the mysterious Tyrian purple snail, to make her own powerful statement. Our own rituals, from our daily regimens to our choices of scent and style, are the latest chapter in an enduring human story, the timeless desire to present our best selves to the world, to forge an identity, and to connect with something greater than ourselves. So we leave you with a question to ponder. Which of these ancient Roman practices surprises or fascinates you the most? Was it the shocking use of crocodile dung in the quest for smooth skin, the sophisticated global trade that brought cosmetics from every corner of the empire, or the profound spiritual belief that a simple line of kohl could ward off evil spirits? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you and continuing the conversation. If you enjoyed unraveling these ancient mysteries with us, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Tap the bell icon so you never miss our next adventure as we continue to explore the hidden secrets and unforgettable stories of the ancient world. Thank you for watching.